The sky was on fire. Smoke rose in oily columns above the treetops, curling against the bruised dusk like black serpents. Eleanor Cade didn't look back. Her skirts were torn, her boots wet with blood and creek mud, and her breath came in sharp, ragged bursts as she fled through the timber with a satchel slung tight across her chest. The sound of burning pine cracked behind her. Somewhere in the far-off trees, a horse screamed. She ran like the devil's breath was at her neck, and, in truth, his name was Calder Blackthorn. She'd love him once. Maybe she still did. God help her if she did. But what he carried inside him, that slow-burning fury behind quiet eyes, had turned to something she could no longer understand. It lived in the silence between his words, in the stillness with which he watched the world. She'd seen that silence erupt, seen men fall without time to speak their sins. She had feared him, feared the shadow he walked with like a second soul. And so she ran. Branches tore at her arms. Thorns pulled strands from her braid. But Eleanor didn't stop until the night was so thick the moon couldn't break it. The forest swallowed sound, except for the rattle of her breath and the rustling whisper of her flight. When her legs gave way beneath her, she dropped against the base of a cedar tree, clutching the satchel tight. She wept, quiet and fierce, the way a woman does when there's no one to see her break. By morning, she'd crossed Dry Creek and skirted the rocky ridge north of Whiskey Gulch. A trader's post lay a few miles on, maybe less. She had heard whispers of it from passing ranch hands. A place where folks asked no questions if you kept your voice low and your coin honest. She needed that. She needed to vanish. The sun was high when she reached it, a crooked row of timber buildings huddled around a dusty square. The stench of old hides and horse dung thickened the air. Dogs barked somewhere out of sight. A man sat sleeping beneath a sign that read Red Jack's Mercantile, his hat tilted over his eyes, a rifle resting across his lap like a warning. Eleanor dismounted stiffly, tying the horse, no, not her horse, Calder's horse, to the post. She drew the brim of her hat low and entered the trading post. The door creaked. Inside, the air was thick with pipe smoke, gun oil, and something older, like secrets steeped in rot. 3 men stood at the back, hunched over a crate of whiskey bottles. One looked up. A scar cut across his jaw, and his eyes moved too slow for his smile. "Well now," he said, "ain't you a flower in the dust?" Eleanor didn't answer. She moved to the counter, dropped $2 with a clink. "Soap, bread, shotgun shells, .44 caliber." The clerk, a man with eyebrows like winter brush, nodded, said nothing, and began gathering supplies. She felt the scarred man's eyes on her the whole time. A snake coiled, watching its mouse hesitate. "You ain't from around here," he said. Still, she said nothing. When the clerk handed her the paper bundle, she turned, slow and measured, and walked past them. Her fingers brushed the knife tucked in her waistband. Out the door. Sunlight stabbed her eyes. The dogs were still barking. She reached the stable on the edge of town, where a boy no older than 12 stood sweeping. He looked up at her with soot-smeared cheeks and said, "Need a place to hide, miss?" Her mouth almost answered, "Yes, God, yes." But she just handed him a coin. "Water the horse. Don't ask who owned him before." The boy nodded. "That kind of day." She stepped inside the dark, musty stable, intending only to sit, breathe, and think. But then she heard the door creak behind her. "Scarjaw, I reckon you owe us a word or two, sweetheart," he said, stepping in, his boots loud on the dirt floor. 2 more followed behind him, their smiles meaner than thirst. "I don't owe you a damn thing." "That's where you're wrong," the second man said, drawing a knife from his belt. "Town like this, a woman rides in alone with a fancy horse and no man to guard her? That's called an invitation." She backed toward the stall. Her hand found the pitchfork handle, fingers closing tight. "You touch me, and you'll lose more than teeth," she said. They laughed. Then came the sound. A sound like a church bell cracked in two. The snap of a rifle bolt, cold and certain. A voice, low and iron-hard, spoke behind them. "Step aside." Scarjaw turned, slower than he should have. "This ain't your—" The rifle barrel met his jaw. "Last time. Move." Scarjaw backed away pale. The other two shifted like wolves sensing fire. Eleanor saw them glance between Calder and each other, weighing odds. One of them twitched. The rifle barked. The man dropped, shot clean through the leg. Screaming, the other ran. Scarjaw didn't. He dropped his knife and raised his hands. Eleanor stared at Calder. He looked like he'd ridden straight from hell. Dust-covered coat, boots stained with blood. His hair was longer than she remembered, black as tar. His face bore new scars, deep ones, angry red slashes healed wrong. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. They were the same. Calm. Too calm. Still oceans before the storm. You followed me, she said. I protected you. No, she whispered. You hunted me. I hunted them. The wounded man was still crying. Calder stepped over him like he wasn't there. You lit the fire, she said, her voice rising. Back at the cabin. I did. Why? Because they were coming. They knew you were with me. I had to send a message. By burning it down? They would have come anyway. The fire bought you time. He moved closer. She stepped back. I'm not yours to save, Calder. He didn't reply. He never did when it mattered most. Outside, people had gathered, drawn by the gunshot. Calder turned to them, rifle still in hand, and they scattered like ash on the wind. Eleanor watched him walk to the wounded man, kneel, and whisper something she couldn't hear. Then he stood, picked up the knife, and handed it to her. For protection, he said, I don't want her blade. But you'll need one. Their eyes locked. For one moment, she saw not the man who killed, but the man who had once kissed her hair in the dark and held her as she wept for what the world had taken. I can't be what you want, she said. I don't want anything, he replied. Not anymore. And he turned and walked out. She stood in the stable long after he was gone, the knife cold in her hand. Outside, the world went on dust and trade and the never-ending lie of peace. That night, she didn't stay in the town. She waited until the moon rose and the last fire went dark. Then she slipped into the woods again, riding hard toward the hills. She didn't know where she'd go, only that it had to be somewhere Calder Blackthorn couldn't follow. She camped beneath a stone arch on the ridge, where the stars looked close enough to bleed. The wind smelled of ash and pine. Her fire crackled low. In her satchel, she carried an old photograph, faded at the edges. A child in her arms, Calder at her side, barely more than a shadow. It had been taken before the fever took the boy, before grief hollowed them both. She hadn't looked at it in years. Now, she held it to the firelight, and for a moment she didn't feel lost. Then came the howl. Not a wolf, not quite. Something else. Low, long lonely. She rose and kicked sand over the fire. The knife he'd given her rested in her boot. She wanted to throw it, but she didn't. Dawn came like an apology. She broke camp in silence, heading east toward the river, toward the mountains, somewhere high and cold where his shadow wouldn't reach. Yet, as she rode, the silence in her chest grew louder. It wasn't his darkness she feared anymore. It was what she saw inside it, the reflection of her own. The wind shifted as the river came into view, wide and swollen with spring melt, its current brown with silt and hungry with speed. Eleanor Cade sat astride her horse on the rise above it, sweat darkening her collar, one hand shading her eyes. The river was broader than she'd expected. Faster, too. Trees lay uprooted along the far bank like broken limbs. No bridge, no ferry, only a fallen pine stretched crooked across part of the flow, wet, slick, and rotting in places. Still, she meant to cross. Behind her, the forest was too still. No birdsong, no wind, just the quiet hum of something pressing close, unseen but certain. She didn't know if it was Calder or the memory of him. She didn't know which scared her more. The horse snorted. Eleanor slid off the saddle, ran a hand down its neck, then loosened the cinch. You wait here, she murmured. If I fall, ride west. Find a fence line. Or hell, find a better rider. She pulled off her coat, tied it around the satchel, and stepped into the cold. The water sucked at her boots, instantly numbing her calves, then her thighs. She gritted her teeth and pressed forward. By the time she reached the tree, The current was tugging hard enough to unfoot her. She caught the log and climbed atop it, hands numb and trembling. Halfway across, the wind picked up. Rain soft at first, then harder, needle-fine and cruel. The log shifted beneath her. One misstep and she'd be gone. She moved, slow and deliberate, crawling on hands and knees. The far shore crept closer. Just a few feet now. One more reach. A crack split the silence. Wood groaned. She lunged, fingers catching wet bark. Her boots slipped. The current seized her legs. For a breathless moment, she hung suspended between earth and water. Then arms grabbed her. She screamed and kicked. "It's me!" Calder grunted, hauling her up and over, both of them tumbling into the mud. She shoved him back, gasping, fists flying. He let her hit him once. Then he caught her wrists. "You're bleeding," he said. "I'd rather drown." Then stopped flailing. She stilled, panting, water pouring off her like spilled regret. "What are you doing here?" "I told you. Protecting you." "I didn't ask. I didn't wait for you to." He released her hands. She sat back, chest heaving, mud soaking into her dress. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the rain muting everything. "You never know when to let go," she said. "Neither do you." He stood, offered her his hand. She ignored it and got up on her own. Together, without speaking, they made their way under the trees, where the ground was dry enough to strike a fire. By dusk, Calder had snared 2 rabbits and skinned them without ceremony. Eleanor sat near the flames, arms wrapped around her knees, watching the shadows move on his face. "You always show up like that?" she asked finally. "Right when the world's about to split open?" He didn't look up. "Just good timing." "Why not let me go? Let the world have its bite?" He shrugged. "Because I've seen what's out there. Maybe I deserve it." At that he paused, the knife in his hand stilled against the meat. He looked at her, really looked. "No one deserves it," he said, "but some carry it better." She stared into the fire, blinking back something bitter. "You think that's what I'm doing? Carrying it well?" He said nothing. She tossed a stick into the flame, watched it catch. "I saw you that day," she said quietly. "After I left. You watched me go. Didn't say a word. Just stood there like a stone. I was trying to stay human." She turned toward him, confused. "You begged me not to follow. I figured letting you walk away was the only decent thing I had left to offer. You burned the cabin." It was already ash. She didn't answer. Neither did he. They ate in silence. The fire hissed in the rain. That night, Eleanor didn't sleep. She sat with her back to a tree, her rifle across her lap, eyes half on Calder, half on the shadows between trees. She didn't trust him. Not really. Not yet. But she didn't trust the world more. By morning, they moved east, deeper into the backcountry. Game was scarce. Water scarcer. Calder found a spring beneath a ravine, and they refilled their canteens. They didn't talk much. Didn't need to. The rhythm of survival had its own kind of language, footsteps, breaths, small warnings from the birds or the shifting wind. 3 days in, the bear found them. It came at dusk, silent, sudden. Eleanor had been tying down their tarp when Calder's voice rang out, sharp as a shot. "Don't move." She turned slowly. The bear was massive, black, wet with rain. No growl, no bluff, just hunger in its eyes. Calder moved between her and it, raised his rifle. But the powder was damp. The shot misfired. The bear charged. Calder drew his knife. Eleanor grabbed a branch, useless but instinctive. She shouted, waved it. The bear reared. Calder slashed, once, twice, blood on his sleeve, his shoulder torn. The bear swiped, clipped his ribs. Eleanor screamed and drove the branch into its side. It turned, staggered, then backed off, vanishing into the trees like a curse. Calder collapsed. Blood soaked his shirt. His jaw clenched, eyes fluttering. She dragged him to the fire and tended the wounds with shaking hands, tore strips from her petticoat, pressed them against the side. "Don't die," she said over and over. "You're still bossy," he murmured. "Shut up." He smiled, then winced. That night, while he slept fitfully, she dug through his pack looking for medicine and found the letter. It was folded, worn at the edges, her name written in that spare, deliberate scrawl of his. She unfolded it slowly. *L. If this reaches you, it means I was too slow, too proud, too angry. You always said I held too much inside. Truth is, I held it because I didn't trust what would come out. I thought I could protect you by being strong. Turns out, strength without softness just breaks things. You were the only light I ever knew. I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner. *. Her hands shook. She folded it, slid it back. In the morning, he was fevered but awake. You read it, he asked. I didn't want to. But you did. Yes. He looked away. You lied in it, she said. How? You said I was your light. But I'm just as broken. I didn't say you weren't. I said you were mine. They rode slower after that. He healed, but not fully. His limp grew worse. She took the lead, navigated the narrow ridges, found the cleanest water, learned how to get a rabbit without flinching. Sometimes she caught him watching her, not with hunger, not with guilt, just quiet awe, as if he couldn't believe she was real. A week after the bear attack, they found a ravine where the trees thinned and the sun made gold of everything it touched. She wanted to stay, just for a night. They built a fire and shared the last of the coffee. He carved a pipe from ashwood. She stitched his coat with thread stolen from a general store long gone. In the distance, wolves howled. Neither of them flinched. You ever think about going back, she asked. To what? Civilization. Where a man like me gets hanged for things he hasn't done yet. No thanks. You ever wonder what you'd be if the world were kinder? He looked at her. I'd be the man you think I used to be. She didn't correct him. Later, while gathering firewood, she heard hooves. Not Calder's. Not hers. Too many. Too fast. She crouched, rifle ready. 3 men. Dusty. Armed. One wore a deputy's badge turned sideways on his vest. The leader had eyes like cut flint. She recognized him. Clay Rourke, the brother of the man she'd killed. He hadn't changed much. Just more lines in the face. More steel in the spine. She's near, he said. I can smell her. Calder stepped from the trees. No further. Rourke laughed. You again. I warned you once. This time I won't talk. She shot my brother. He was beating a girl half to death. She ain't the law. She did what the law wouldn't. Rourke dismounted slow, drew his gun. I ain't here for a sermon, Blackthorn. Just what's owed. Eleanor emerged from the trees then, rifle aimed dead center at Rourke's heart. You get one chance, she said. Turn around. You won't shoot. I already have. The men shifted uneasily. Calder's knife gleamed in the firelight. The standoff held. Then Rourke laughed. This ain't over. It is if you ride, she said. He studied her, then looked at Calder. Used to think you were the devil. Now I see she's the one who broke you. No, Calder said, stepping closer. She's the one who saved me. They left. The quiet returned. She didn't lower the rifle for a long time. That night, Calder said nothing. Just sat beside her in the dirt, hands folded. Why did you follow me? She asked finally. Because I needed to see if I could still feel. And I feel everything when you're near. The fire cracked between them. She reached for his hand. He let her. No promises. No apologies. Just warmth. Just breath. Just 2 broken pieces, finding a way to fit. By dawn, they rode on. But something had changed. They no longer moved apart. They moved as one. Snow crowned the ridge like a veil of salt on dark stone. The wind had teeth sharp and mean, and the horses moved slow along the narrow pass, hooves muffled by fresh powder. Below, the river ran like black thread through a torn seam in the earth. Eleanor Cade kept her coat tight, her eyes sharper than frost. Ahead of her, Calder's figure cut a silent path, leaning slightly from the old wound in his side, his rifle slung, and hand always resting near his knife. They'd ridden north for 6 days now, keeping away from towns, crossing land that only hawks and ghosts remembered. And still, the feeling hadn't left her, that they were being followed. She had told herself it was paranoia, but paranoia didn't leave tracks. The prints showed at first like shadows, 1 set, then 3. Rourke's men hadn't quit. 2 more days, Calder said, studying the horizon. There's an old silver mine in the hills, abandoned since before the war. Narrow pass, one way in, one out. You've been there years back. It's tight country, easy to defend. She didn't answer right away. Then, and when they come? He looked at her, expression unreadable. Then we stopped running. The sun barely touched the horizon by the time they reached the camp. It lay between twin cliffs like some long-forgotten wound carved into the land. A rusted mine cart stood half-buried in snow, and the remnants of a tool shack leaned sideways against time. They set their camp inside, lit no fire. Calder scouted the cliffs. Eleanor checked the ammo, laid out the rifles, sharpened knives. "I thought we were done with this," she said as she cleaned the chamber of her revolver. "Fighting ghosts. These ones still breathe," Calder said, "and they carry more than vengeance. Men like Rourke think justice only comes at the end of their barrel." Eleanor paused. "Isn't that what you used to think?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. That night, the moon rose cold and high. They slept in shifts. When Eleanor woke from her turn, Calder was carving again, this time a small shape, in pine, the size of his palm. "What is it?" she asked softly. "Horse," he said. "For a child." She tilted her head. "Whose child?" He shrugged. "Maybe yours. Someday." Her throat caught. She hadn't thought of children in years. Not since the grave behind the old cabin. Not since the fever took him. "You still think there's a future out here?" she asked. Calder's hand stilled. He looked up, and for the first time in days, something almost tender flickered in his eyes. "I think, if we survive this, we'll have earned one." At dawn, hoofbeats came, echoing faint across the ridge. 3 riders, maybe 4. Calder rose from where he'd sat all night, already lacing his boots, already armed. Eleanor gripped her rifle and stood beside him. "They'll fan out," he said. "We hold the narrow point. Can't flank us there." She nodded, jaw tight. "Let's end it." Snow crunched beneath boots and hooves. The world smelled of pine, blood, and cold iron. Then the first shot rang. It missed, hit rock. The sound cracked the air like thunder. Eleanor returned fire, clipped one rider's shoulder. He spun, tumbled from the saddle, howling. The others dismounted and came on foot. Calder moved like a shadow, eyes scanning, hands sure. He took a position behind the fallen cart and waited. More shots. Sparks flew from rocks. One bullet chewed past her cheek. She didn't feel the pain. Not yet. Rourke's voice rose from below. "Eleanor Cade, you've run long enough." She yelled back, "You want justice? Come take it." "I don't want justice. I want to bury what shamed my family." Calder fired. A cry answered. "You think killing me makes it right?" Eleanor shouted. "Your brother beat a girl near to death. He'd have killed her." Rourke stepped into view, rifle high, anger carved into every line of his face. He was blood. "So was I," Eleanor said. The standoff held. Wind howled between the cliffs. Then the 4th man appeared behind the shack. Sneaky, young. He'd found a back trail. He raised his pistol. Eleanor saw him too late. Calder didn't. He lunged, knife drawn, tackled the man, the 2 of them tumbling down a slope out of sight. Shouts, grunts, the sound of steel tearing flesh. Eleanor turned, heart hammering, but Rourke charged then, eyes wild. She fired. Missed. He tackled her. They hit the snow hard, rolling. Her rifle slid, out of reach. His hand closed around her throat. "I should have let you burn," he spat. "You're poison." Just like him. She gasped, clawed at his arm. His grip tightened. Stars bloomed behind her eyes. Then a roar, wordless and full of fury. Calder crashed into them, blood on his face, knife gleaming. He tore Rourke off her, threw him against the rock wall. Rourke raised his gun. Too late. Calder drove the blade home. The man's breath caught. His eyes went wide. Then empty. He slumped to the ground. Silence. Calder turned. Blood poured from a wound in his side. Eleanor caught him as he stumbled. "Damn you," she whispered, pressing her hands to the wound. "Don't you do this." His smile was slow. "Weak. You're bossy when you're scared." "I'm not scared." "You're shaking." "I'm cold," she snapped. He winced, laughed, then coughed. "Hold still," she said. "You're gonna live." "You sure?" I've decided. He reached into his coat, pulled out the carved horse. Then give him this. She blinked. To who? Whoever needs reminding that not all men are monsters. He passed out. For a heartbeat, she thought he was gone. But then his chest rose, shallow and steady. The others fled. She didn't chase. They'd seen what Calder could do for love. That was warning enough. 2 days passed. She kept him warm, stitched the wound, fed him snowmelt and broth. On the 3rd day, he opened his eyes. You still here? He rasped. You owe me, she said. For what? For saving your hide. He smiled. Weeks later, the thaw came. They built a cabin on the ridge, just enough timber and stone to make it through the next season. Calder carved a porch rail. Eleanor planted sage. The wind still howled some nights, but less like a threat now, more like an old story fading at the edges. One evening, Calder sat on the porch with a neighbor's boy in his lap, teaching him how to whittle. Eleanor watched from the doorway, arms folded, smile soft. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She had run from his darkness once. But now, in its quiet shadow, her own light finally dared to shine. The frontier didn't change them. They changed each other. So, what do we take from this tale? Maybe it's this: not all darkness is evil, and not all light is innocent. Sometimes the one you fear is the only one who knows how to carry what you can't. And if this story moved you, don't forget to share it with someone who's still searching for the place their light belongs. The wind stirred the high grass like whispers from the dead. Dusk crawled over the ridge, painting the landscape in bruised hues of violet and rust. Smoke curled from the chimney of the small cabin Calder had built by hand, the scent of pine and ironwood blending with the cold. Inside, Eleanor stirred stew over the fire, her hands moving with practiced rhythm, though her mind was far from the hearth. The days had been quiet, too quiet. And Calder, he'd grown more restless with each passing morning. She'd seen it before, that flicker behind his eyes, the one that meant he was hearing things before others did, watching shadows no one else noticed. That war-born sixth sense, like the wilderness itself, had carved itself into his bones. When it stirred, it meant trouble was coming. He stood now on the porch, rifle resting across his arms, gaze fixed on the eastern line of trees. His hat tilted low, jaw clenched. Not moving, not blinking. You expecting ghosts? Eleanor asked from the doorway. He didn't turn. Someone's been watching the ridge. Neighbor? He shook his head. Too quiet, too patient. Her hand slid to the pistol on her belt, not out of fear but readiness. How long? 2 days, maybe 3. Eleanor stepped out beside him, the weight of the air tightening around them like the hush before a storm. Could be they're waiting for dark. Could be, he said, or for us to feel safe enough to bleed easy. She reached out, touched his arm. He looked down at her hand, then up into her eyes. No words passed between them. None were needed. That night, they ate with their rifles leaning by the door. The boy from the next valley over had gone missing the week before, only 11. No tracks, no note, just vanished. Calder had searched 2 days straight. Found nothing but an abandoned campfire and boot prints heading west. The kind of boots made for riding and running, not for farming. Now, the silence of the hills felt like a scream swallowed too deep to echo. When the knock came, it was soft, too soft. Eleanor reached for her rifle. Calder moved faster. He flung the door open, rifle raised, only to find a woman standing there. Mud on her skirt, a shawl clutched around thin shoulders, hair falling in soaked ropes. Please, she gasped. Help me. Eleanor's breath caught. She recognized the woman. Her name was Liza Gray. She'd once been married to a man named Jed Gray, known up and down the territory for riding with bounty men who sold girls south of the border. Jed had vanished 2 winters ago. Word was he died running from Texas Rangers, but Eleanor had heard whispers that Jed hadn't run alone. He'd brought others with him. One's meaner, quieter, wolves pretending to be men. Liza stumbled in, shivering. Calder locked the door behind her. I escaped, she said, clutching Eleanor's arms. They kept me in a shack near the old canyon. Said they were going to trade me to a buyer in Abilene. Said they'd done it before. How many? Calder asked. 3, maybe 4. One of them's got a brand on his cheek. Says he's the one who took your boy, Eleanor. The cabin went still. The fire crackled, the only sound. Eleanor's fingers clenched at her side. You're sure? He bragged about it. Said the Cade woman's light would die with her blood. Calder's voice was pure steel. Where? Liza pointed east, past the broken bluff. There's a trail. You follow it down, you'll smell them before you see them. Eleanor was already lacing her boots. You sure about this? Calder asked. She buckled the holster at her hip. That boy's still alive. We don't wait. He nodded once. Then we ride light. Just what we need. They saddled the horses under the weight of stars. No goodbyes, no promises, just the cold grip of determination. Liza stayed behind, wrapped in blankets, whispering prayers neither of them had faith in. By dawn, they'd reached the bluff. From above, the canyon opened like a cracked jaw. Smoke drifted from a low fire beside a crooked shack. One horse was tethered. 2 men sat outside, one sharpening a blade, the other chewing bark. Calder signaled with his hand. 3 fingers. A third man stepped from the shack, dragging something. A child. Eleanor's vision tunneled. It wasn't her boy. Not the one buried under red dirt years ago. But it was someone's child. Pale. Bruised. Too small for the world's weight. She didn't wait. She fired first. The man holding the boy dropped, shoulder shattered. Calder was already moving, down the slope, fast and silent. Eleanor followed. The camp erupted. The other men drew pistols, scrambling for cover. Calder slid behind a fallen log, firing with deadly calm. One man fell face first into the ashes of their fire. Another ducked behind the shack. The branded man, taller, lean, a scarred cheek like melted leather, grabbed the boy and bolted for the canyon mouth. Eleanor cut him off. He raised his pistol. She fired first. The bullet tore through his thigh, and he screamed, dropped the boy, and fell to his knees. She was on him in seconds, gun at his throat. Where's the others? Gone, he rasped. Just me now. She pressed the barrel harder. You took that child. Why? Coin, he spat. Always coin. Ain't no justice in this land, only who can pay. Her hands trembled. He grinned. Go on. Be a hero. You think killing me brings back your brat? She pulled the trigger. He slumped, silent. Calder reached her just as she dropped the gun. Her hands shook, blood on her knuckles. He's alive, he said gently. The boy. Scared, but alive. She nodded, eyes not leaving the corpse. I didn't kill him for justice, she whispered. I killed him because I wanted to. Calder said nothing. That night, they returned to the cabin. The boy slept wrapped in fur, Liza beside him, singing something low and old. Eleanor stepped out into the wind. Calder followed. You all right, he asked. No, she said. But I'm alive. He nodded. That's enough for now. She turned to him. We'll never be rid of men like him. No, Calder said. But as long as they keep rising, so will we. She leaned into him, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Not for warmth. For promise. For the knowing that some fights don't end. They just get handed to the ones strong enough to keep swinging. And that was all right. Because now she wasn't running. She was standing her ground,